This is Language, Chapter 4, Lesson 8, about irregular adjectives that compare. So if you remember, our last lesson was about using adjectives to compare two things or more than two things, and you take those adjectives and you add ER or EST to the end of them depending on how many you're comparing. So this is going to be kind of a continuation of that lesson, except just like most things in language, we've got a few that don't follow those rules of adding ER or EST, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So it says at the top of page 94, some adjectives that compare are not formed by adding ER or EST. They are irregular adjectives because they don't follow the rule. Two common irregular adjectives are good and bad. And they're showing us rather than and adding ER or EST to the end of these, you don't say something is gooder than something else or the goodest. You know right away when you hear that that's not right. And so if you look at this chart on page 94, it shows that for these two adjectives, when you're using them to compare, the spelling of it completely changes. So for good, when you use that to compare, you would use better for two things, or best if you're comparing a group of things. Or for bad, if you're comparing, you would use worse, or in a group it would be worst. And so it shows you some examples here of how that looks in these sentences. I make good muffins. There, the adjective good is describing the muffins. Now we're comparing my muffins to my dad's muffins in the next sentence, and it says my dad's muffins are better than my muffins. Not gooder, better. And finally, my big brother makes the best muffins of all, comparing the brother's muffins to everyone else's. So here, in our choices A, B, C, it wants to know which sentence uses one of those irregular comparative adjectives. So if you look at our choices, think about which sentence is comparing, and your choice would be sentence B. This is the best bakery in town, comparing this bakery to all those around town and saying that it's the best. It's better than everything else. So underneath here, we've got a sentence where they're asking us to choose which is the correct one to use in parentheses. The garlic bagel tastes blank than the tomato bagel. So you can see we're just comparing these two different bagels. So in this case, you would use worse. Then down below, the apple tarts are the blank items in the bakery. Here you're comparing more than two because you're comparing the apple tarts to everything else in the bakery. So that in that case, you would say the apple tarts are the best items in the bakery. So let's go to page 95 to look at some examples to see what they'd like us to do. It says, choose the correct adjective to complete each sentence, and our choices are good, better, or best. So if you're looking at number 1, I have a blank idea. In that case, they're not asking you to compare anything, they're just wanting to describe your idea. So when you're not comparing, you would just use good. I have a good idea, because I'm not comparing it to anything else. Let's see who bakes the blank banana bread. Here, we don't know exactly how many people they're comparing, but the way it's worded makes us think it's more than two. So we would use, let's see who makes the best banana bread. Number 3, Jane made blank banana bread. Here we're not comparing Jane's banana bread to anyone else's, we're just describing it. So we would say Jane made good banana bread. Number 4, Mark baked blank bread than Jane did. So here we're comparing Mark's bread to Jane's bread. That's two things. So we would say Mark baked better bread. Number 5, these are blank cranberry scones. Again, we're not comparing anything, we're just describing what the cranberry scones taste like. So we would say these are good cranberry scones. Number 6, I think cranberry scones are blank than banana bread. In this one, there's two things we're comparing, the cranberry scones to the banana bread. So we would say better. Sorry about the hand. Number 7, we've had a blank time eating these. Again, there's nothing being compared, so we would just say we're having a good time. And number 8, Mora's pumpkin muffins are the blank muffins of all. Those words of all are a big clue that you're comparing this to a whole group of things, or out of everything. Hers are, you would say, the best. Now in exercise 2, we're just choosing between bad, worse, or worst to complete the sentences here. So again, you have to decide, are we even comparing things in the sentence? If we're not, you would use bad because you're just describing, or if we are comparing, how many am I comparing? Number 1, my first cooking experience was blank. Here I'm not comparing it to anything else, I'm just describing it. So I would say it was bad. Number 2, it was even blank than my attempt to bake a pie. So here you're comparing this attempt to your attempt to bake a pie. There's two events that you're comparing. So you would say it was even worse. Number 3, my cooking left a blank smell in the kitchen. Again, there's nothing being compared here. It's just describing the smell. So it would be a bad smell. Mom said it was the blank odor ever in her kitchen. Here you're comparing this odor to every other odor that's ever been in the kitchen. So you would say it was the worst odor ever. Number 5, I think my cooking is blank than that of my little brother. So here you're comparing my cooking to the little brother's cooking. That's two things. So you would say worse. And number 6, the results of my cooking are the blank eating experience a person can have. So here you're comparing this experience of eating to every other eating experience. So you would use worst. Then exercise 3 gives us a sentence with choices in parentheses, and I have to choose the one that makes the most sense in the sentence. Number 1, my friend's oatmeal raisin cookies were the blank I ever tasted. So here you're comparing your friend's oatmeal cookies to all the other cookies you've ever tasted. So we need to choose best, because better and worse are both used to compare two things, not a whole group of things. Number 2, she gave me this blank recipe for them. Now here you're not comparing her recipe to anyone else's. It would just be a good recipe. Number 3, my brother said that my second batch of cookies was blank than my first batch. So here you're comparing the two batches, two things. So you would say worse, because worst is for a group and good is not comparing. Number 4, my grandmother thought that both batches of cookies were very blank. Here, that you're not comparing, you're just seeing how grandma described them, and she described them as very good. And number 5, I think that the cookies were even blank than mom's cookies. Here you're comparing these cookies to mom's cookies, two different types of cookies, so you would choose better. So let's look at what the workbook page would like us to do. On page 63, in the first section, you just have to find and underline the irregular adjective that's used in each sentence. And so you've got a choice of those 6 words. Good, better, best, bad, worse, worst are the 6 words you're looking for. Each of those sentences in that first section has one of those, and you have to find it and underline it. In the second part, it gives you a choice between 2 in parentheses in the middle of these sentences, and you have to circle the choice that would fit in the sentence. So you have to read it and see, are we comparing things here or are we not? And if we are, how many we're